Morning. Welcome to the Boise Unitarian Universalist Fellowship's online worship service. We are so glad that you've joined us this morning. I'm the Reverend Sara LaWall. It is my great honor to serve this beloved community. And whether you are zooming in with us from down the street, from across the city, or from another state, you are welcome here. Whoever you are and wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. Whoever you love and however you identify, you are welcome here. Whatever faiths you have known, if any, you are welcome here. And it is good to be together today. I want to take a moment to welcome any newcomers among us. We are just delighted that newcomers continue to seek out spiritual community and find us in these virtual online times. Thanks for joining us today. We invite you to introduce yourself in the chat so we can warmly welcome you into our community. And to fill out a newcomer card, we'll post a link to that form in the chat. And that is our way of staying in touch with you and sharing with you all that is happening in our fellowship. We are really excited that we are offering so many virtual ways for us to connect with one another in these times, from meditation to yoga to small groups and social hours. And we have a few things that I want to highlight for us. For all of you newcomers, our Inquirer series continues this week in its own Zoom space right after the worship service. We'll post the link to that in the chat at the end of the service. And that's a space for newcomers to get to know one another and to hear a little bit more about our fellowship and Unitarian Universalism. And I want to remind you that there are just a few days left for you to enter the raffle to win this beautiful Asylum Seeker Hosting Project quilt, created by our own Joan Williams and her quilting circle. As we celebrate our Asylum Seeker Hosting Project today, I wanted to have this beautiful quilt as a backdrop so you could all see it all service long. You can purchase raffle tickets by going to our website, boiseuu.org, and clicking Give at the very top right corner of the screen. It'll take you to our donation card, and you can use the special contributions box and purchase your ticket and just write Asylum Quilt Raffle. Tickets are $10 each or 3 for $25. You have until November 18th to buy your tickets, and then we will announce the winner. It's all virtual shortly thereafter, and we'll make sure that we announce that to the whole congregation. Our plate partner for this month of November is the uncompromising, dedicated folks of Planned Parenthood of Idaho. Each month, our congregation chooses a local organization to share 25% of its offering plate. And this month, we are proud partners again with Planned Parenthood, dedicated to their work for education, healthcare, and advocacy for all people, no matter what. 25% of that unpledged plate offering will go to Planned Parenthood at the end of the month. As we gather together, even virtually, we want to begin with a land acknowledgement, a recognition that the land upon which our church and homes exist is the ancestral land of the Shoshone, Bannock, and Paiute tribes who inhabited a vast region of Idaho. And we acknowledge all of those ancient tribes who roam this land, whose names have been lost in history. We offer this acknowledgement as a recognition of the longer history of the land, long before colonization. And we offer it as an uncomfortable truth. And in that discomfort, we push ourselves to think beyond this mere acknowledgement of words into what actions we might take to forge deeper relationships with local Indigenous communities and leaders. May we make space to hear their truths, working to bring justice in every way that we can, allowing them to re-inhabit this place and giving them back the resources they need to heal their communities. Today's service is a celebration of our Asylum Seeker Hosting Project. Finally, a celebration. We had planned to have a big party for the whole congregation back in May with food and music and dancing so that we could introduce all of you to Romel officially. And then, like so many things, this pandemic hit and we had to abandon those plans and regroup. And so here we are together with our virtual worship celebration today for all that this project has accomplished, for all that it has brought into our lives as a whole community. And we're excited to share some of the stories and the details of how this all came to be with you today. Romel came to us from Honduras. We learned of his story through this kind of emerging justice network during the border crisis. And you'll get to hear a little bit more about that network later on. Romel had been held in detention for almost 4 months after crossing the border in August of 2019. We were introduced to him that November, and here we are almost 1 year later. And this year has been filled with extraordinary challenges and heartbreak, alongside momentous joys and successes. I know that we Unitarian Universalists, some of us, often express a little skepticism when it comes to the idea of miracles. But when I think back on how all of this came to be and how it has all unfolded, miracle is the only word that fits. But miracles in my theology must have helpers, conjurers, manifestors, those who dive in and say yes despite the odds, knowing failure could happen at any moment. Those who bend the arc toward justice. This project came at a time of great crisis on our southern border, when our government was separating families and the migrant caravan moved its way to our border. Many were met with violence and some with tear gas. And so many of us felt called to help, but we just didn't quite know what help could or should or needed to look like. And we didn't really go looking for this project. We kind of bumped into it. But it connected us together in beautiful and surprising ways. It felt like it gave our whole congregation and parts of our wider community a common purpose, a chance to be of help, to be of service in the world. To all of you who supported this work in big and small ways, thank you. To our project team leaders who kept saying, yes, I will help, and who connected us with the wider Treasure Valley community and who worked for months and months and months preparing, thank you. We celebrate your efforts today. Because in that preparation, we all began to remember how it feels to live in a place of hope and love and miracles, a place of community and connection, not just for ourselves, but a place where all are truly welcome, a place where all are beloved, where all those things become the light that shines so brightly that darkness is banished. And so in honor and celebration of that light, that belovedness, I invite us all to ground ourselves this morning, to breathe together, to fill your body with breath, knowing that as you breathe connected to one another in beloved community, connected to the interdependent web of all existence. As we share our opening poem together, we share it in honor of the belovedness that connects us. Thou art the song of my heart in the morning. Thou art the dawn of truth in my soul. Thou art the dew of the roses adorning. Thou art the woven whole. Thine is the grace to be steadfast in danger. Thine is the peace that none can destroy. Thine is the face of the need-driven stranger. Thine are the wings of joy. Thou art the deep, to the deep in me calling. Thou art a lamp where my feet shall tread. Thy way is steep past the peril of falling. Thou art my daily bread. Thine be the praise of my spirit uplifted, Thou art the sea to each flowing stream. Thine be the days that are gathered and sifted. Thou art the deathless dream.
I've been broken, I've been blessed. Life's so beautiful, but sometimes it's a mess. Within the chaos, there's a calm. There's peace in the eye of the storm. Even after the darkest night, the sun will rise with each new morn. Open the windows and break down the walls. Let the light shine in. Find the wholeness that was there all along, and let the healing begin. You've been weary, time to rest. Times have been the worst, they've also been the best. Hidden in the heart there's a fire, a young within the yin. Let love light the path ahead. Lift up the lamp that shines within. Open the windows and break down the walls. Let the light shine in. Find the wholeness that was there all along, and let the healing begin. There is a balm in Gilead to make the broken whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the wounded soul. We've been so lost, may we be found still walking on up to higher ground. Deep in the struggle there is joy. The obstacle is the way. Let justice be our guiding star until we reach a brighter day. Open the windows and break down the walls. Let the light shine in. Find the wholeness that was there all along, and let the healing begin. Open the windows and break down the walls. Let the light shine in. Find the wholeness that was there all along, and let the healing
Each week, we light our flaming chalice, a symbol of our free faith, a beacon of hope, love, and justice. We join in this lighting in solidarity and community with hundreds of other Unitarian Universalists lighting chalices today in homes and in virtual worship services, reminding us that we are connected to one another and to a larger community of faith and love. We welcome back our young chalice lighters who ground us in our hope for a brighter future, even in the darkest of times. If you have a chalice nearby, you are invited to light it with our young chalice lighters, Katie Bell and Aiden. As they light the chalice from their home, you are also invited to share in the chat where you have lit your chalice this morning. With our collective chalices lit in all our spaces, we offer you this call to worship.
Somewhere, a voice cries out for freedom.
Somewhere, a need for safety breeds a dream.
Somewhere, trains and boats and buses drown out the sorrows for all that is left behind.
Somewhere, a family forces out goodbyes, watching until their beloveds fade into a speck of light on the distant horizon. Somewhere, weary feet keep on moving forward, one exhausted step at a time.
And sometimes, in moments of despair, a spark of hope emerges, a bridge to another land, conjuring ideals of opportunity and possibility.
Sometimes, when all seems lost, faith is found in the kindness of strangers.
Sometimes, a chance encounter becomes the manifested miracle.
Sometimes love rises up, reaches out a hand and says, welcome. We have been waiting for you. Come, let us worship together.
I invite everyone to cozy up for our Time for All Ages this morning. Today, we're going to be talking about bridges. And I mean that both literally and physically, the bridges that connect across distances, as well as metaphorically too. So what are your bridges or your practices and actions that keep you connected to other people? There's a lot of ways that our answers to this have changed over the last 8 months since we have been living in, quarantine. I forgot the word for it. And there are a lot of ways that we have to focus even more than usual on maintaining our bridges, our connections. Okay. Our story is going to help us think about connections in this deeper way. It is called Building the Bridge as We Cross It, and it was written by Reverend Sara and I, especially for today's service. Once upon a time, there were 2 villages. The Sun Village which is a pretty big village, and the Moon Village, a little bit smaller, a little bit rounder. And these 2 villages were separated by a canyon. It was a deep canyon. And they honored it and they loved that canyon. They also loved their own villages. They existed separately, happily humming along in life. They knew that the other one was there. They could see them, but they never had much cause to interact. The canyon was deep, wasn't easy to find a way around. You'd have to walk for miles and miles in order to get to the other village. Both villages were beautiful, and they had natural space to play, sit, and contemplate. The people of each village helped their community when times were hard, cooking food, creating beautiful art and music full of questions and insight, playing with the children by making forts and baking cookies. They would write heartfelt letters and poetry, which they read before their village meetings. One day, though, an earthquake hit the Sun Village, and everything shook so badly, it felt like that things had been turned upside down. Buildings crumbled, streets buckled, and floods came in some places. The villagers were distraught. They did their best to recover their homes, community buildings, and supplies, but soon they could tell it wasn't enough. When the Moon Village heard this, they heard the commotion and they saw the destruction from across the canyon. They felt heartbroken for their neighbors. They came together, all of them, and they said, "What can I do? What is there to be done to help?" Give me a moment. My villagers are floating away. They gathered the whole community together and they looked around at what they had. They had a lot to offer, actually. They had much needed support. They had extra hands with so many people. They had spaces where they could temporarily house the Sun Villagers. They had supplies, and they would be able to care for the elders and the children and the hurt of the Sun Village. And so they felt called to rise up and care, because a stronger network of care means a stronger community. They'd learned this all their lives. They'd seen it practiced. They had this vision, but they didn't have a plan. And it can be really hard to come up with ideas when you feel scared and urgent, looking across this canyon, seeing at all the people hurt and scared. And so one precocious child spoke up. Here's our precocious child talking to his family and said, "Why don't we just build a bridge to connect the two villages? There's a spot nearby that was narrow enough. They had big enough logs, they could do it." It was a marvelous idea. Only none of them had ever done anything quite like that before. They didn't know how to build that bridge. They didn't know all the steps. Some of the villagers wanted to map it out step by step with the whole design beginning to end. Some wanted a checklist of people, supplies, etc., everything that they could list. Some wanted to talk to all the experts and get each villager's input. It's a lot of work. The child spoke up again. "We have a lot of materials and we have really thoughtful people, but we don't have a lot of time. Why don't we just start building and learn what we need as we go? We can build the bridge as we cross it." Everyone took a deep breath. That was true. There were people who were hurt, and they needed to begin feeding and caring for the Sun Village. After that bit of wisdom, the Moon villagers got to work. Each villager contributed. They shared their wood. They had lots of different logs and stuff. So they shared their wood. They shared their supplies, their tools for building. And some brought their own tools from home. Some brought cables. Some people were able to stay for days at a time working on this bridge, while others focused on teaching each other the proper building techniques and then letting them work. Even away from the village, people were gathering these supplies, the water, the first aid kits, the bedding that they knew that their villagers would need, the Sun villagers would need. Oh no. And some contributed funds to help buy spare parts and supplies. It was a sustained effort, and everyone had time and something to give. And as the bridge began to come together, it wasn't always pretty. They would try something, and maybe it didn't work, or a piece didn't fit. And that was tough, but the builders made sure to move backwards and try again. Sometimes no one knew exactly what to do next, which is a really uncomfortable feeling. And over time, they had to practice trusting themselves and each other enough to learn the way. Soon the bridge was complete, and everyone was able to cross from both villages and share resources and support. And suddenly, the Sun Village and the Moon Village found themselves joined together and looking at all the differences between them. New foods, new fabrics, new music, new ways of seeing the world. Each was very grateful for the gift of witnessing their neighbor's culture, and they were grateful to see what values they shared, a deep love and connection, caring for family and community. In time, the Sun Village was rebuilt. Oh, you've gone sideways. There we go. It was rebuilt right side up, and the villagers returned home, but they always remained connected by the bridge between the two. Things sometimes went wrong with it. A board would snap, bundles of supplies would fall, and every time something went wrong, they got together and they figured out what kind of repair was needed, and then they got to work. This bridge has lasted for generations. Villagers are fond of telling the story of its building. When they face tough situations with many possible paths forward and lots of pitfalls that they might face, instead of getting stuck in the overwhelm, they think about their bridge and gently remind each other, we can do this. Remember, we can build the bridge as we cross it. I wonder, what are your bridges or connections to the people who live nearby you, people who share your community or your village? Maybe neighborhood play dates, going to school together, sharing resources and information. What are your connections to people who live far away from you? That one's a little trickier to think about. I wonder, when have you had to choose between lots of different options for doing something? Maybe you had to figure out how to make a new friend or to solve a really difficult homework problem. What kinds of things help you feel connected to other people? Okay, so one bridge that we're going to be offering this morning for our children to connect with one another is an experiment. We will be hosting a children's fellowship hall after the service. So children are invited to stay in the service, get your art supplies, your craft supplies, Play-Doh, building blocks, whatever you want, and draw or listen or art along to what you hear and what stands out to you as you listen. After the service, when all the grown-ups go to their breakout rooms, I would like all of our children to stay in this main worship room, and we will be getting together. We're going to have a brief check-in. We'll sing a song, and Reverend Sara is going to be a special guest for this Children's Fellowship Hall. So thank you all for listening, and I hope to see our children after the service.
Thank you, Jem, for that fantastic story and beautiful pictures. And I look forward to being with our children after the worship service today. Building the bridge as we cross it became quite a mantra for this project, especially in those moments when there were more questions than answers, which was a lot of the time. In fact, it became so much a mantra, we kind of got tired of hearing it once in a while, because very few congregations had embarked upon this project of sponsoring an asylum seeker as a whole community. And we said those words to each other so often, but the metaphor really helped us push forward and have faith in the toughest moments of the project. Earlier this year in February, I was talking with a rabbi in Chicago whose congregation was part of this new burgeoning program of asylum sponsorship. And they were supporting a father and son who had been reunited after the first wave of family separation. And when I asked the rabbi how his congregation got involved in the project, he said to me, "Dumb luck." And that's how many of these things often start. These ideas that are beyond our imagination, but deeply worthy of our attention. The more the rabbi and I talked, the more we both recognized that we had found ourselves here in this space of asylum sponsorship because so many people had been asking us, what can we do? Or rather telling us we have to do something. Angry and horrified at children being torn from families and put in jail, at the tear gassing of migrants, at the callous rhetoric and dismissal of human life, so many of us were asking, what can we do? It turns out if you ask that question enough, sometimes the universe drops an answer in your lap. Maybe we can help just one person, one family. And then the question becomes, how will we do it? So the universe dropped an answer in our lap with an email from a retired UU minister, the Reverend Dottie Matthews, who volunteered her time with several frontline organizations to sift through the wave of online interest in helping asylum seekers. I still marvel at the serendipitous timing of that email that I actually opened it and read it and shared it and passed it along. And I'm delighted to welcome Reverend Dottie here with us today to share about the genesis of this program and how it has grown.
Well, thank you all. I'm so grateful to be here with you today. I didn't expect this to be so emotional, but thus far the service has been very emotional for me. In preparing my small contribution to this day's celebratory service, I did a search of my files and I found that yes, Reverend Sara and I had our first communication in early spring of 2019. And yes, you are one of the first congregations that I worked with. After that initial contact, that was followed by countless emails and phone calls and video chats. Many of the people that are in this service were parts of those conversations. And throughout that time, I was always so touched to be a distant part of your team as your congregation stood in such heartfelt and active solidarity with our migrant siblings. With Romel, as he came into the picture very particularly, but all those who like him are making that arduous journey to come to this country and seek their longed for freedom and safety. BUUF is one of several faith communities that I have come to have the joy of working with through the UU Service Committee's program. We call it CAPAS, the Congregational Accompaniment Project for Asylum Seekers. And I am so grateful for the use of that metaphor, building the bridge as we cross it, because from start to finish, this entire effort has been, continues to be, such a walk of faith. I found that even trained immigration attorneys don't call themselves experts on the subject of asylum because the dark and chaotic governmental system has changed so many times, especially in these most recent years, that all of us involved in it are just doing our level best to navigate our way through. And due to that uncomfortable truth, another metaphor that I have found myself very often saying to those of us engaged in this work, that we are all just stumbling forward with open hearts. It is hard and challenging work, as many of you know. In your congregation's case, you are having the joy of seeing your hard work come to happy fruition as Romel moves toward greater and greater autonomy and freedom. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. But like all of our justice work, we don't do this because we are guaranteed of success stories, but because our faith calls us to step into the sufferings caused by the world's many injustices and see how our faithful efforts can help diminish that suffering. In this asylum work, we are together very literally about the business of saving lives. So I thank you all, you boofers. I thank you for your good and faithful work. Romel, I celebrate you and the safety that you are finding. And I thank you all so much for inviting me to be a part of this day.
Thank you so much, Dottie. Thank you for accompanying us on this journey as well. It has been an overwhelming experience, as so many of our Asylum Project team leaders have shared with me over these many months. And one of the great moments of joy, you know, I always knew this congregation was a generous congregation. But throughout this project, that generosity has exploded in ways I don't think any of us ever anticipated. Your generosity of spirit, your generosity of love, and your financial support has been extraordinary. Together in all the efforts, with a grant from our Unitarian Universalist funding panel, to a GoFundMe campaign that allowed for family and community members to donate, to our auction special appeal that added extra funds to this project, we raised more than $50,000 to engage in this work together. And I remember that when we started out, like, we set this sort of small bar of like, if we could just raise $2,500 to get started, then we'd feel like we could move, we could start. That would be the next plank on the bridge. And we just blew past all of our expectations. And that's really because of the open-hearted stumbling through with faith from all of you and all the ways that you invited others to journey with us. The generous heart of this congregation is so strong, and we see it each week. Each week as we take up an offering to engage in that spiritual practice of generosity, to give to all of the self-sustaining ministries of this fellowship, and to share our gifts with organizations impacting our local community. When we give, we are saying yes to the things that matter most in this world, to our highest ideals and our highest values, even if they're not yet realized. To participate in our offering today, we invite you to visit our website at boiseuu.org and click Give at the top right corner of the screen. You can use the Sunday offering box or the special contributions box. Of course, your weekly checks and mail are also appreciated. We enjoy all the wonderful little notes that you send us along the mail every week. Rachel and I read every single one of them and pin them up on a bulletin board, so feel free to keep sending them along. Your generosity is the measure of your commitment to beloved community and to our principles and values as Unitarian Universalists. We thank you for that generosity that continues week after week and year after year. Our offering will now be received.
fuese que a muerte no me encuentre vacío y solo sin haber hecho lo suficiente.
Solo le pido a Dios que lo injusto no me sea indiferente,
que no me abofete la otra mejilla después que una garra me arañe esta suerte.
Solo le pido a Dios que la guerra no me sea indiferente.
Es un monstruo grande y pisa fuerte toda la pobre inocencia de la gente. Es un monstruo grande y pisa fuerte toda la pobre inocencia de la gente.
Le pido a Dios que el engaño no me sea indiferente. Si un traidor puede más que unos cuantos, esos cuantos no lo olviden fácilmente.
Solo le pido a Dios que el futuro no me sea indiferente.
Desahuciado está el que tiene que marchar a vivir una cultura diferente.
Solo le pido a Dios que la guerra no me sea indiferente.
Es un monstruo grande y pisa fuerte toda la pobre inocencia de la gente.
Es un monstruo grande y pisa fuerte toda la pobre inocencia de la gente.
Solo le pido a Dios que la guerra no me sea indiferente.
Es un monstruo grande y pisa fuerte
Toda la pobre inocencia de la gente.
Es un monstruo grande y pisa fuerte toda la pobre inocencia de la gente.
Es un monstruo grande y pisa fuerte toda la pobre inocencia de la gente.
Hello, I'm Cathy, and I'm a member of the Asylum Seeker Hosting Project team. Reverend Sara asked us to share our most significant memory of the Asylum Seeker Project. And while there was tremendous preparation and a lot of work behind the scenes for months with the whole congregation to get ourselves ready to host an asylum seeker, I want to share the urgency we experienced late last fall after receiving the request to consider sponsoring Romel. I will read an excerpt from the November 13th email that found its way to us from the immigration attorney who met Romel in a Louisiana detention center. She ultimately volunteered to represent him for his bond hearing, which needed to be expedited. She said, I met a man with a very sad story last night, a gay man from Honduras. His brother killed a gang member, which put his life in increased danger. After trying to escape danger in Honduras, he eventually had to leave the country with his boyfriend. He and his boyfriend were kidnapped and held for ransom in Mexico. The boyfriend was murdered in front of this man. He was miraculously saved because police drove by. Because of the injuries from the kidnapping, he now has to walk with a walker. There appear to have been gruesome injuries. He has a credible fear, but has nobody in the US. He is bond eligible. This man should not be in detention. He needs to be in an environment where he can have rehabilitation physically and emotionally. But we all know that without a place to go and a solid sponsorship plan, that is not going to happen. If I take his case, I'm going to do it pro bono. He didn't really ask for me to represent him. He did a fairly good job with his initial paperwork and speaks a lot more English than most. At least for now, he mainly asked to see me because he had heard that I would listen and be supportive. His greatest need seems to be a place to live. It can be anywhere. After reading this email, sharing it with the team, and with all of us feeling the heartbreak of his story, we knew there was no turning back. This felt like a good match for us. Scott and I met Romel for the first time at a 15-minute poor quality video call on his 36th birthday on November 23rd. I remember the emotion of that call, his gratefulness and elation to meet someone who wanted to help him, his sense of desperation, and his personableness. Despite his heartbreaking story, he still had joy, a big smile, and a huge heart. He introduced us to a number of best friends he had made in detention, some of whom were deported during the time he was detained. It soon became apparent that we needed to move very quickly and try to get him released on bond before his final merit hearing on December 20th, at which he could very well have been deported. With the guidance of the attorney, our team sprang into action preparing a parole package to show our commitment to sponsorship and support upon Romel's release. The package included financial statements, letters of support from members of the team and community and from many of you, proof that we would help him secure medical care and other needs. The document was over 120 pages. The bond hearing was finally granted and scheduled for December 19th. In an act of faith, Reverend Sara purchased plane tickets, including a return ticket for Romel. Because the immigration court was in Miami conducting a virtual hearing with Romel and his lawyer in Louisiana, I flew to Miami to serve as an in-person witness while Reverend Sara went to the detention center to be with Romel. The task that morning was to convince the Miami judge to release him on parole. We had to show that we were determined and able to support him. Then, if his bond was granted, we had to get it paid and secure his release that same day in order to prevent his final merit hearing, which was scheduled for the following day. Scott was on standby at the Boise ICE office, ready with a check in hand, befriending the ICE agent who expedited the payment and communication back to the detention center. This was not their typical practice. So many factors were out of our control, so we took control of what we could. There were so many potential pitfalls and obstacles, so many things that could have gone wrong. At shortly after 5 p.m. on December 19th, Romel was released to Reverend Sara. It felt like a miracle.
Thank you so much, Cathy. It really was a miracle. I remember that day very well. I shouldn't have been able to sit in the makeshift courtroom in the detention center, but the warden took pity on me, I guess, and was nice enough to let me there. And I have never been more nervous in my whole life for what was to take place. It really was a miracle to be able to walk out of that facility with Romel and with a friend of Romel's who had also been released on the same day, and to drive them back into town. This whole story, as I mentioned earlier, has become a story of miracles. Every step of the way, miracles happened. And we didn't always notice them at first. We just kept moving forward, doing the next thing and the next thing. But now we can see them as a result of the loving and dedicated work this project's team leaders have put in over these months, and the way that all of you have supported the project. This is the beauty of being in beloved community together. We reach out and we hold one another. We hold one another in times of joy and sorrow. We celebrate together. We grieve together, because we all need reminders that we are not alone in this world. We all need reminders that we journey beside each other in life, especially right now. We share our lives with one another because we need each other to survive. And because in these times, it helps to know that there are others out there that are struggling and celebrating and loving this crazy, wild, hurting world right alongside all of us. As we receive the beauty of music from our own Carrie, Bastian, you are invited to share your joys and sorrows in the chat box, and to read one another's joys and sorrows, to receive and share the blessing of each other's lives and journey with one another in spirit. Go ahead, Diana.
Sorry. It is December 2018, and I traveled to San Diego to protest at the Mexican border with Reverend Sara and 3 others from Booth. We are asked to walk the 1.5 miles to the border in silence, and my mind fills with the peace I have been seeking. I have felt lost and without purpose since my husband passed away last year, and I feel like this effort at resistance will help serve the families and children at the border. We accomplish our task, but when I arrive home, it seems that there is more to do, but I don't know what. I had to buy a sign that said, "Be fearless," to remind me to take risks. Reverend Sara comes to the Refuge and Immigrant Ministry in February of 2019 and asks if we think sponsoring an asylum seeker is something we can do along with the congregation. Here at last is something concrete to give us all purpose. I had to say yes. After 9 months of planning, fundraising, reaching consensus and our commitment goals, Reverend Sara tells us we have been asked to sponsor a young man from Honduras named Romel. His tragic story touches our hearts, and after we meet him on Skype, we are struck by the fact that despite his losses this year, he maintains his compassion, optimism, personality, and enthusiasm. After meeting Romel, I had to say yes once again, and agree to be his host family. Choosing life and purpose has made me stronger. I have so many memories of this past year, most of them good, and it has been a roller coaster of emotions. When ICE came to my door on January 24th and took Romel away, I was so afraid for him. But when he called on February 10th and told me he was free, I felt such gratitude and joy. It certainly was a memorable day. When he got hired at Meals on Wheels, his joy was so hard for him to contain that our spirits soared that day. Living with Romel has changed me. The unexpected pandemic has changed us both. There have been challenges and sacrifices that we did not expect. The experience has been harder than I anticipated, but the gift of having Romel as a companion has been worth it. I see him struggle so much with his losses, the violent death of his partner Felipe, the death of his 9-year-old son, his mother's stroke, the loss of his Honduran home to Hurricane Eta this past week. But what changes me is his faith and gratitude for all he has been given and has accomplished. His pleasure in everyday events like a long walk and dancing inspire me. His belief that all will be well in the end gives me hope. His delight in a good meal in his car and the recent election remind me that so many things in life should give us joy. He is fearless and doesn't even realize it. His bravery challenges me to keep living a full life. I'd like to introduce Romel to all of you. Some of you have met him and spent time with him, and for those who have not, this is his day. He has been taking English lessons, and he wanted to speak with you in English. Romel?
Hello, everyone. I want to thank all of you in my share family for helping and loving me past year. I never dreamed that I will have a work permit, a job, a car, and an apartment, in like 1 year. I could not have done it without all of you. Same as my best memory is this year is all the wonderful meal I had shared with people in the booth and friends in the community. Thank you so much for you, low and super.
Thank you, Romel. And it is a joy to be able to see you, maybe not in person, but someday we'll get to have the big party with the food and the dancing. But you have brought such joy and purpose to so many of us, and you've brought us together in a community in ways that were unexpected. And all of the successes and accomplishments this year, though they have been supported by amazing, wonderful people who love you dearly, a lot of credit is due to you. Your drive and your commitment and your joy of just living life to its fullest is infectious. And you deserve every success. And we are just so happy for you. And I can't personally wait to see your car and your awesome apartment. Friends, this has been a joyful day of celebration, but also a reminder for us that so many lives exist on the brink, and that there are many travelers out there still searching, hoping to find spaces of security and freedom, of hope and possibility in all corners of the world. So I invite us all to come together in this spirit of prayer and meditation. Let's take a moment to breathe together, to feel that deep human connection as we hear this prayer for travelers, this oración para los viajeros, from the Reverend Angela Herrera. Spirit of life and love. This is a prayer for all the travelers, for the ones who start out in beauty, who fall from grace, who step gingerly looking for the way back.
Esta oración es para todos los viajeros, para los que comienzan en la belleza y caen de la alegría, quienes caminan tímidamente buscando la manera de volver.
And for those who are born into the margins, who travel from one liminal space to another, crossing boundaries in search of center.
Y para todos los que nacen en los márgenes, viajando de un lugar liminal a otro, cruzando fronteras y buscando del centro.
This is the prayer for the ones whose births are passing from darkness to darkness, who all their lives are drawn toward the light and keep moving.
Es una oración para aquellos cuyos nacimiento en el paso de oscuridad a oscuridad, aquellos que se sienten atraídos por la luz y avanzan hacia ella.
And for those whose journeys are a widening road that begins and ends in the same place, though only when the journey is completed do they finally know where they are.
Y para aquellos cuya jornada son un camino sinuoso que comienzan y terminan en el mismo lugar, aunque solo al terminar sabrán por fin dónde están.
For all the travelers, young and old, aching and joyful, weary and full of life, for the ones who are here and the ones who are not here, the ones who are like you, and they're all like you, and the ones who are different, for in some ways we each travel alone.
Para todos los viajeros, jóvenes y viejos, dolientes y alegres, cansados y llenos de vida.
This is a prayer for traveling mercies and sure-footedness, for clear vision, for bread, for your body and spirit, for water, for your safe arrival, and for everyone you see along the way.
Esta es una oración por la misericordia para que andes con pie firme y visión clara, por el pan para tu cuerpo y tu espíritu, por el agua para que llegue seguro y para todos aquellos que encuentres en el camino.
In the name of all that is holy. Gracias a Dios. Amen.
Amen.
Gracias, Romel. Friends, it's been a joy to celebrate this momentous time together, this glorious project together. What you might not know about Romel is that he loves to dance. And so when we get to have our party, we will surely have music and dancing. But for our closing song, this beautiful rendition of Keep On Moving Forward, Sigamos Adelante by Emma's Revolution, you are all invited to get up out of your seats and do a little dancing and singing along with Emma's Revolution. And Romel, you better be dancing too.
Gonna keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Never turning back. Never turning back. Sigamos adelante, siempre adelante, siempre adelante, sin volver atrás, sin volver atrás. Gonna keep on loving boldly. Keep on loving boldly. Keep on loving boldly. Never turning back. Never turning back. Amaremos con pasión. Siempre con pasión. Siempre con pasión, sin volver atrás, sin volver atrás. Gonna reach across our borders, reach across our borders, reach across our borders. Never turning back, never turning back. Vivamos sin fronteras, siempre sin fronteras, siempre sin fronteras, sin volver atrás. Gonna reunite the family, reunite the family, reunite the family, never turning back, never turning back. Familias reunidas, siempre reunidas, siempre reunidas, sin volver atrás, sin volver atrás. Gonna keep on moving forward, keep on moving forward. back, never turning back. We love you.
I invite you to place your hand over your heart or grab the hand of the person next to you for our closing blessing. I offer up deep gratitude for all those who made today's service possible, for all of you on the Asylum Seeker Project team whose voices were heard today, and those of you whose voices were not heard today but have been working tirelessly behind the scenes. Thank you. Valora McCallum, our tech host. Thank you, Carrie, Bastian, and Jem. It is each week an extraordinary blessing to be such a part of a dedicated and beloved community. Friends, may we keep on moving forward together. Siempre sin fronteras, always without borders. Siempre adelante, never turning back, but turning always toward hope, with the knowing deep in our hearts that sometimes love rises up, reaches out a hand and says, welcome. We have been waiting for you. Blessed are we all. Go in peace.